glad to see so many faces this morning. Hello. Hi, Justine.
Morning.
I was just giving it a moment for a few more humans to pop on. We have quite a few people planning to be here, but I guess we can go ahead and start and people will just popcorn in as they popcorn in. But welcome everyone. I'm Kate Heffernan. I'm the education director and one of the lead teachers of the 200-hour teacher training. It's so lovely to see you. I know we like to start with intros of folks on the screen, but Jess, do you want to do just a 2-second intro of you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm the director of Down Under, Justine. This is our total favorite part of owning a studio. So delighted to be here. Kate, do you want to just maybe do we may have quite a big group here. So should we just do sort of intro, name, reason you're interested, like a one-liner, because brevity is the
Soul of wit.
source of teaching, exactly. So, Mira, do you want to just begin and we'll kind of go around your name and what brings you to be interested?
If you're willing, yeah.
Yes, you said Mira, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mira, and we're in Bethesda, Maryland, and I am interested in the Down Under Yoga teacher training because I'm planning a return to teaching yoga, and that's I need to take a path back in, and it feels like the right path.
Great. Welcome.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Just unmute yourself popcorn style. Doesn't matter if you clash with someone else. Just a name, please, and reason for considering the 200. You're going to have to volunteer teach, so lead away.
Hi, my name's Mel. I'm just considering a bunch of places for 200-hour training in the Boston area. And I'm doing this because I've wanted to go through yoga teacher training for a long time now. To obviously teach, but also to just learn more about myself and about my body and about the history of the practice.
Great. Welcome. Let's take a couple more just so we get a sense of the diversity of people who consider trainings.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ronnie. I've been practicing Down Under for 3 years now, mostly at Newton. And my goal here is not necessarily to teach yoga, but to deepen my practice in yoga. So that's what I'm looking into.
Perfect.
Love it. Let's take one more. What a great cross section. So you can see we have people who have no intention of teaching and want to deepen their practice. By the way, they often end up being the best teachers of all. We have people who have taught and are looking for an entryway back into teaching. And we have people who are kind of on the fence. Anyone else want to kind of introduce why they're considering it?
Hi, I'm Lenny. I'm from Austin, Texas, but I live in Boston, Massachusetts. I am a movement enthusiast. I've been practicing yoga on and off for the past 5 years. I'm a student at the Berklee College of Music, and I teach music lessons. I also am really into calisthenics and acro dance sort of. Anything related to that. So I think it would be cool to bring some of my teaching experience into the yoga world and to dive more into how yoga can heal the body.
Lenny, thank you. What another beautiful demographic of the type of person who'll take a teacher training. We'll get doctors, nurses, physical therapists, massage therapists, psychotherapists, people who want to bring the training into their professional wellness work. So that gives you a lovely little cross section of who's in the training. And, Down Under began, 20 years ago with 3 of us who were the graduates of Patricia Walden's teacher training. So the people on Zoom screen right now, you have no idea, but may end up not only becoming great friends in this journey, but who knows what you end up manifesting together. Kate, do you want to start? Do you want me to launch in?
So I'll give you an overview of what we're going to talk about here, and I would just love also if you would, even just by a show of hands, we're talking about 2 separate 200 hours that we have coming up. We have our summer or modular intensive training coming up, which will be a bit more for the self-starters who are really wanting to get it done in a sort of pace it your own way. And then we also have our fall 200-hour teacher training, which starts in September. Just by a quick show of hands, how many of you are thinking more about the summer or the modular choose your own adventure? Okay, couple hands. And then are the rest of you fall? Okay. And then some of you just like, I don't know, I just want to be here and see what it's about. Okay, that's awesome. Wonderful. So the wonderful thing about our 200, and I'll try to keep it brief because I know, Justine, you have more to say, but the wonderful thing about our 200 is regardless of which training you choose to do, it's all the same content. It's all the same curriculum. And it's a curriculum that we have over the past 20 years have honed, and it's very methodical, right? We start at the beginning and then we gradually build upon the information. And even with the summer where you can kind of choose your own adventure and like watch things in your own order, there's still stuff that will build upon everything. And eventually it'll all come together at the end. So our 200-hour teacher training covers 3 main tracks. We have our intentional sequencing, which is what I'm in charge of. I'm sort of your nuts and bolts gal. I teach asana and I teach sequencing, and I totally nerd out about how poses fit together and how sequences fit together and how to sort of set people up for success if they're really interested in like, I want to learn how to do X pose. And I love talking to you about how to break it down into its component parts like a recipe so that you can build it in a way that creates sort of a pathway for success, if you will. You'll also have the experience of getting to meet Shauna Lemmelman, who is one of our hot power flow teachers, and she'll teach you about sort of a set sequence. So you'll come out also knowing a sort of pathway of like, I don't want to be creative. I don't want to have to think about making my own sequence. Here's a sequence that's prepped and ready and proven. And then I can just work on how I can take my students through this journey with maybe poetry or love of music or any other theme that you might be able to put on top of it. And the last little track that we have in our 200, which is actually quite unique, not all 200s have this, is a restorative and meditation track. So you'll learn a little bit about restorative yoga, yin yoga, and meditation. So if that's something that really lights you up, which I will admit, even though now I'm a restorative teacher, I hated restorative when I first started, but it just goes to show that like seeds get planted. And then, 10 years down the line, you might be like, oh, wow, that's such a change in my body and my practice. And it's a thing I want to do now. So within all 3 of those, you will also get lots of philosophy and history of yoga. And again, like I just think this training is such a such a unique one because it's not just one of us leading everything, right? I'm going to be the first to admit that I will not be your person to talk to you about hot power flow. I've done it, I know it, but like, I'm not your girl. I'm your girl to talk to you about aligning your legs and your hips and warrior 2 versus warrior 1 and et cetera, et cetera. Like I'll talk to you all day about that. We have teachers who are really specialists and excellent at what they do come in and teach you. So in that way, we are a collaborative training. And that means you're going to be learning like intro to prenatal from someone who's actually been a prenatal teacher, who's actually led prenatal teacher trainings, as opposed to me, who's never been pregnant, who has, again, I could fake through a prenatal class, but that's not the person you want to learn from, right? Someone who can just fake through it. You want to learn from someone who has dedicated their career to learning how to do this really well. And I think that's something that really sets us apart. I might have gone too far and too deep, Justine. I got excited. But that's me.
Right. No, I could listen to you forever, Kate. Carry on. Other things you want to cover or you want me to jump in?
Yeah, feel free to jump in and then I can get more into the nuts and bolts of the differences between the trainings.
Yeah. I mean, I think, your introductions beautifully showed the different kinds of groups of people who think about doing a teacher training. At this point, don't take yourself terribly seriously, meaning even if you're sure you don't want to teach, you're just jumping in to dive in to get deeper. Whether or not you want to be a jazz hand studio teacher or a private teacher, or you just want to teach a group of people at your school, there's something actually very empowering about hearing the sound of your own voice. And let's pretend, Ronnie said, like, I just want to kind of understand my own practice better. Something extraordinary happens when you're asked to stand up and reflect back or to turn into words what you think you know somatically. Does that make sense? So we call the 200 the beginning, begin the journey. It's 11 weekends, as Kate said, and you'll emerge with a toolbox of skills that really equip you to teach all 3 tracks. Let's talk about academics for a second. You know, the reason you want to know 3 different tracks is that I'll speak as a delivery coach, right? Like half the people on our floor have gone through our trainings, and I'm the one that usually coaches them on that quality of dialogue that will make someone change their work schedule to come and take your class. Great dialogue doesn't happen if you don't know the architecture of the yoga poses. Does that make sense? If you don't understand the architecture of a twist, you're not going to come up with lovely metaphors or similes, or your storytelling around it, or the images you use, or the adjectives you choose will be hollow. Does that make sense? So I want you to think of the 200 as learning the alphabet before we learn to write poetry. And so when Kate says, I'm your structural girl, I mean, she's being a little bit modest. What she's saying is, I'm going to equip you to understand all styles of yoga, the architecture of the yoga poses, and how to build an intentional sequence. If you decide you want to go and be a hot power teacher, your language, that's a set sequence. So we know what's coming. Think Journey into Power, there's set chapters. But your languaging, your ability to deliver that set sequence is going to be so much more improved by what Kate's taught you in intentional sequencing. Similarly, in restorative, like, you know, again, get to know the school. You'll find teachers like Lynn Starikoff will tell you, I was super mean with her. Like, I held her back from the floor and held her back from the floor because she had the up the mountain voice. And she hadn't really found a way to be authentic in the last 10 minutes of class, right? So if you're a vinyasa teacher, it's all about your relationship to intensity and to, you know, vigor. And then at the end of the class, you're going to lie 40 people down, ask them to close their eyes, and just feel whatever comes. That's like an audacious privilege. And so the restorative, the quality of your voice, in order to be empathetic when you're teaching restorative yoga, is directly derived from the restorative material. So our job is to put you out equipped, not only, I mean, again, forgive the immodesty, but it is arguably the best training on the East Coast. Why do I say that? You know, when Yoga Journal wanted to define outstanding yoga teacher trainings, why did they come to Down Under staff to give that definition? And here's your first introduction to business of yoga. So if this is shocking to you, apologies, but not only do we equip you academically, in other words, put you out with a toolbox of skills that you can go anywhere in the world and teach, we also kind of strip the mirage of what this industry is and equip you to be a teacher in it. So Melissa said, I'm shopping around looking at trainings in Boston. Let me tell Melissa what she's going to discover. She's going to discover corporate yoga and independent studios. Those are the 2 models this industry breaks into, right? So corporate yoga, think Core Power, Lifetime, Equinox, you know, big box gyms or private equity backed corporate chains. You will learn one method. You will be learning from places that pay an hourly rate. You'll be paid 20 or 30 bucks to go in. You'll be asked to come maybe a half hour before and after. And while you will be called an employee, meaning you'll have the ability to get unemployment, maybe sick days, you watch what happened in the pandemic, and all of those places fired in one email thousands of yoga teachers, meaning the yoga philosophy walks out the door the minute the going gets tough. Okay, so Melissa says, oh, that doesn't sound great. I'm going to go do a training at an independent yoga studio. Every independent yoga studio in Boston, and let's be clear, most of them around the country, are operating illegally. That means they hire their teachers as 1099s. If you've heard the term independent contractor, that means none of those yoga teachers get sick days. None of them get healthcare. None of them can actually get parental leave should they become pregnant. None of them can get unemployment if the yoga studio owner decides to can them. So The yoga industry is incredibly flawed in that you can imagine how philosophically troubling it would be to be learning from teachers, wellness teachers who can't afford to get sick. Many of our mentors, so a lot of us kind of came up through the ranks, are now watching our teachers. Michael Ponte will tell you, he's one of the intentional sequence leads. His teacher right now is doing a GoFundMe for her cancer, having literally trained generations of teachers. So forgive the stark reality, but one of our jobs is to put you out into the world equipped to know exactly what you are enabled to ask for as an employee, what the state of Massachusetts says any yoga teacher employed at a studio needs to be called an employee and have those rights. So let's come back to the academics. So Kate said, you don't really want to have Kate or myself teaching you about yoga philosophy. You want to have the PhD from Oxford, who's now finishing her postdoc at Harvard, who's spent the last decade steeped in that, giving you yoga philosophy. When you meet Natasha Ratsopoulos, she'd say, don't talk to me about business of yoga. You know, I had this meteoric rise because I got on the cover of the Yoga Journal DVDs. She's not the right person to teach you about that. So again, I'm far less invested in whether you actually choose to do the training with us, but whoever you do the training with, I really want to equip you with what you should be looking for. Do not look for a training which is run by a studio owner. I'll come in, I'll visit you, but I'm not the lead in this, deliberately. Trainings around America tend to be a cash grab. The studio owner does it, keeps all the cash for themselves, has a couple of other lead teachers thrown in there for good measure. One of the limitations of that is you will end up essentially learning to teach like that studio owner. Does that make sense? So one of the things I want to be really clear about in this training is we're a good fit for you if what you want to learn is who you are as a teacher, not how to teach what the lead studio owner of the studio that you're doing it is. Does that make sense? That's why there's 3 very deliberate tracks that you're going to be trained on. In 11 weekends, we're going to give you a toolbox of skills that involves the ability to break down yoga poses, hopefully teach from the ground up some oppositional actions, understand the architecture of the yoga pose. And then you're going to realize that, in fact, teaching, the words that come out of our mouths are only half the gig. The rest is, how do you move through using your body to convey meaning? How do you create a feeling amongst your students of trust and camaraderie? How do you use imagery, storytelling, these sort of pieces that you're learning of use of philosophy or use of anatomy into making a rich dialogue that is part of the secrets of longevity in teaching? So all of the Down Under trainings are very deliberately collaborative, because you have 20-year domain experts who are really good at doing what we do, focusing on you. And I guess I'll end by saying, you know, we're pretty strict about the fact that all of our trainings are well under 50 people. We'll have 40 spots and then we'll have spots for staff, but we don't do the 80-person trainings. So these trainings have sold out ahead of time, well ahead of time for the last 10 years. And if you do call us having missed that and say, oh, I really want to make the full training, please understand we're really strict about creating that intimacy, because those teachers that we talked about are working on sort of stretching you north, south, east, and west. If you're strong structurally, that's going to be your light. What is the shadow to your light? It's often going to be that maybe the tells of how you hold yourself in space say that we're going to work more on your physicality in how you're delivering. You know, I'm clearly an up the mountain teacher. We want to know, where does that cross over into violence? Because 60 minutes of like an up the mountain, let's go, let's go, let's go, gets a little old. If you're a milk of human kindness teacher and the restorative voice comes incredibly easily to you, can you imagine that 60 minutes uninterrupted, of somebody talking just like this gets a little bit soporific. And so part of our job is actually to stretch you, to know your light and your shadow, but also to increase your repertoire so that you can teach all of these different styles of yoga. And that's part of the journey of figuring out who you want to be as a teacher and what your voice is. And I think what stays so compelling for Kate, myself, and those of us, it's a lot of teachers who've been here nearly 2 decades, is that journey of pulling out of a person what kind of a teacher they want to be tends to be one of the more exciting things that we do. So, Kate, I spoke longer than you did. So now maybe
I
we'll
love it. Okay.
pause. But that's sort of a general between the two of us. You get a sense of the journey that you're thinking of going on.
Yeah. Um, I feel like maybe this is a good moment. I have like nuts and boltsy things because I'm the nuts and bolts gal to talk about with each training. But are there questions before I jump into like how each training looks and sort of hours and that sort of thing? Do you have more conceptual or any questions at all before I jump in there? Feel free to just unmute. Yeah, Mira.
Um, Hi, thank you. I had a
Hi.
quick question. Justine, you spoke a little bit about yoga philosophy when you were speaking about Natasha Rosopoulos, and I'm wondering what aspects of yoga philosophy are covered in the training, because it's like the seeds of the whole um, the whole experience and the whole practice. So, thank
Yes,
you.
great question. Yes, so you'll get it from a variety of sources, and Kate, you might want to kind of tweak
Yeah,
my specifics, but
totally.
Sabi Lal is the doctor I was referencing. So
Hmm.
again, one of the sort of area's best domain experts. So Mira, think of Sabi Lal as delivering you honestly, what none of us could. Like, we can do a really good job of applying yoga philosophy to a context. Sabi
Hmm.
is going to give you sort of Oxford, Harvard level actual academic context. So you really understand. And for those of you who might not know what we're chatting about, yoga philosophy ranges from, thousands of year old sutras. So think Patanjali sort of now begins, the exposition of yoga. Yoga is the cessation of the chitta vrittis of your mind, if any of that sounds familiar. That's coming from what we'd call textual based philosophy. So think Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads. That's what I would describe as academic philosophy. Now, many of you are going to be like, oh my God, I mean, I knew this was a school, but that's not what I'm looking for. No problem. But we're going to leave you well versed in how to bring in, let's say, day-to-day philosophy. So what Natasha, who you'll meet, will do is maybe connect the practice, the asana practice that you're doing. Part of the skill in teaching is helping people understand, why is this not a fun fitness class? Right? Like, you all know yoga has this hook, right? It kind of got into us somehow. It's a little bit more than just physical asana. So at a superficial level, Mira, asking your question, our job as teachers is to convey, even if we're a purely structural teacher, our job is to help the student understand that what they're observing in the rotation of their upper arm, purely physical, can translate to, oh, I'm also observing how I breathe when I'm in a fight with my spouse. Isn't that interesting? My shoulder, da, da, da. Oh, can I translate that observation to my habit pattern? So, Kate, I'm not sure if you'd want to add to that, but Mira, you will get, like everything. I could tell you the same thing in anatomy. You will get a solid foundation in anatomy. You will get a solid foundation in, all of these different kind of tools we're talking about.
I think you did a great job, Jess. I do want to just also maybe assuage some concerns is that you don't need to know any of this yet. Like, if any of you are like, oh my God, Yoga Sutras, oh my God, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about this. the whole point of the 200 is that we are meant to bring you along. Like, yeah, I hope you have a yoga practice, like you've gone to some classes, you maybe have heard a word or two in Sanskrit, but if you haven't, that's our job, right? That's what we're doing in a 200. So, yes, Sabi does go over things like the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, goes over some yoga history to contextualize the lineage that you are learning from. And then also within all the teachers, I do a whole little thing on my first day saying, like, I'm an asana teacher, but yoga works its way in there all the time. Because a lot of people don't necessarily know there is a difference between yoga and asana. And so we also try to contextualize that as well. And if you don't know that already, that's okay. You're in the right spot. Um, Again, this is a begin the journey, and we really do a good job, I think, of making sure you see the breadth of everything without getting lost in the forest for the trees, right? We try to make sure there are some good toe holds so that whichever direction you want to go with your continuing your education, you have some information to be able to start that next step if it's exciting to you. If you're like, I'm allergic to anatomy, I don't want to learn about it, okay, I'll give you enough working knowledge that you'll be able to stay like aligned in your practice and be able to help your students stay aligned in their practice. But I'm not going to force you to learn like all of the names of the quadricep muscles. I don't think that's necessary, but we'll give you pathways if you're excited to do more. Because again, this is just a starter set to see what makes sense for you so that you can move on beyond then. Because all of us, including, Justine and myself, who've been doing this for decades, like we still are students. And that's the thing, right? Like you're never done learning. And I think that's something that can be sometimes a little bit of a bummer when you find that out in the 200. You're like, wait, I'm not done after this? Like, I'm not just going to be able to take this piece of paper and be like, I'm an expert. Maybe it's good to know that now, that like this is just the start. And like you'll get to keep accumulating information. And that's really what we hope to do, to set you on a path. Like I've been doing a lot of thinking lately for whatever reason about like my raison d'etre as a teacher. It's something Justine talks about a lot. And it's like, I want to resource people. I want to resource people with what they need in order to take the next step that they want to take, right? I don't want to tell you the next step you take, but I want to give you whatever I have so that you feel empowered and have the agency to take the next step that you want to take. And that's what I think this 200 hour does well.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, Kate. Guys, remember when I said you want to be really careful about a studio owner running a training and learning to teach like someone? I think what I would really want to be in your criteria for excellent training, Kate just summarized so beautifully. I'm not a structuralist, right? So sometimes Kate's talking about planes of movement and stuff like that. And I'm like, what are you talking about again? But I do want to put you out into the world knowing that if your shoulder is lower than your elbow in chaturanga, you're hurting your rotator. Like that's basic. Does that make sense? So I couldn't care less if you never use the anatomy, but we're going to put you out into the world credible. And that's why you'll be able to be hired anywhere if you have a down under training. I couldn't care less if you never use Sanskrit, but I don't want you to look ill-equipped or not resourced, as Kate would say, when a student walks up and says, I have a question about Prasarita Padottanasana. I don't want my graduates to be like, which one's that? Does that make sense? So again, that's where I really want you to understand. You're looking for a series of teachers who've done it long enough that we don't want to teach you how to be a Kate or a mini Justine. That's actually not the goal. And you really want to avoid the trainings that are the big kumbaya circles where we do a lot of sharing of our feelings. Plenty of time for feelings. That's actually not the job of a 200 hour. 200 hours, 11 weekends, or if you're doing the modular, you'll self-pace it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the difference. But you really don't know yet what kind of a teacher you want to be. And so the job of the training is to pull that out of you. And as Kate said, to resource you with these 3 major tracks that will all talk to different pieces of you. Intentional sequencing, you're going to put things together to reach a destination. So let's say I want to teach headstand. There's a certain number of things I need to do to prep the body for headstand. Does that make sense? That's going to test one skill set in you. Then we're going to give you heated flow and you're going to be like, wait, I don't have to make a sequence. Well, this is easy. I definitely want to be a heated flow teacher. Just give it to me. And like all these people come and it's hot and we're just banging through it. And then you're like, oh shit, this is really hard because if I'm not showing you what clever sequence is coming next, it must all be about my dialogue. And then you realize, oh, a heated flow teacher is kind of a confrontation specialist, right? And then we could wax lyrical on the sort of restorative piece, but you get the general gist. So Kate, thank you for being so clear that like our job is to give you tools. Your job is to try this stuff on, and out of that incubation lab, you're going to realize what kind of a teacher you are. More questions. No such thing as a dumb question. You can see where we can go with all the great questions.
A follow-up, Mira.
Yes, just more of a logistical question. Could you give us the dates for the summer intensive training and then the fall teacher training?
I'll do you one better. I'll give you the links for each of those. That was the next step that I would put in. So if you're not sure what kind of training you're interested in, there are, again, 2 that we're enrolling at the moment. This link
you put it in?
is there. It just takes me a second to click.
I'll summarize while you're doing that.
Thank you.
So the fall training and the spring training, they're 11 weekends. You're digesting a lot of information. You're every other weekend. So think about it. We're starting in, fall, and you'll be done early the following year. Really good if you have the luxury to do 11 weekends and you have a little time to kind of digest this information. It's also very kind of handheld for you. You're in a context of a room, Friday night, Saturday 1:30 date, Sunday 1:30 date. You're with your colleagues in Brookline studio all of those weekends. And of course, if you have a wedding or you can't, you can join live stream, right? So remember, we have people doing this training. People come to Down Under. We've had from Germany, from Washington, D.C., from Canada. So we are set up, should you be unable to be in the room, for you to be able to join remotely. You would do the modular training if you, A, wanted to be done by the end of summer. But let's talk about the kind of person that should do the modular training. You got to be a self-starter. You got to be willing to, there is more virtual content. So we're going to have you digest. It'll be as if you're in the room, but you would be responsible for watching that material. And then it will culminate in 3 weekend intensives in which you're going to take that material and put it into practice in the practicums. And you will also have weekly touch bases and coaching sessions with the leads. So that's the vague difference. Kate, I'm not sure if you'd want to add on to that.
No, yeah, exactly right. So the summer intensive 3 main weekends, the timing is it's 7:15 to 9:15 on Fridays, Saturday, Sunday, 1:15 to 8:15, as you said, just slightly different times. And there's also always space. You said that you can join via live stream. There's also always space to watch the recordings of those sessions as well. So the summer intensive is primarily pre-recorded sessions, which is why you kind of have to be a self-starter to get through all of that. The spring and the fall are really meant to be for a learner like me who needs a little bit of time to integrate between each weekend. For both trainings, there is an expectation of also taking classes throughout the training. So at least 20 classes throughout the training. That is, and you'll get discounted class passes as soon as you sign up for teacher training. You'll just be like, hey, I want a discounted class pass for my teacher training. Let me know. And I'm happy to do that once you're signed up. And my goal of taking those classes for you is, yes, to try every teacher you can possibly try. Like if you have space and time, go try yoga sculpt, go try Iyengar ropes, right? Like go try everything you possibly can, because it's so rare to have under one roof so many different styles of yoga. And even if you don't ever plan on teaching that stuff, even if you like take a class, you're like, wow, that was not for me. Like, I don't like that. You will learn from that, right? I had a really wise teacher in 8th grade who said, like, you learn something from everyone you meet. And I really do believe that. So even if you go to a class and you're like, wow, that was a really cool tactic that teacher used. Maybe I can gather that up into my little toolbox. My goal for the required classes is for you to take classes with your lead teachers as much as possible. So on each of those pages that I linked, you'll see the lead teachers of the training marked there. You can, of course, take classes with other people. If you have your own teacher who you're like really attached to, you can certainly still take class with them. But the luxury we get when we're leading teacher training is we have like 3.5 hours to wax lyrical about Sun A and Sun B. I have 60 minutes at the civilian class to teach them all I want to try to teach them and create a sequence and get them to the end of the line so that they leave feeling like they had a cohesive experience. So you actually then get to see how I sort of translate what I'm teaching you theoretically in a classroom and teacher training into a real life experience. Not to mention, you'll get to know me or me as one of the teachers, any of your other teachers better. They'll get to know you better, your practice better, right? Like, is there a way to take this training entirely like separate and you just plug along and do your own thing? Sure. But I think a lot of people come to this training to also build community. And so showing up, being present in class, being present in the studio or on live stream, excuse me, is one of the best ways that you can build community. And I quite often will talk to people about the training and they'll ask that community question. I say, you have to actively try not to be part of the community, right? You actually would have to like remove yourself from the room to not be built into community, because there's this natural way that you'll just gravitate towards interesting people and they'll be chatting at break and it'll just flourish into perhaps lifelong friendships. I did my training 15 some odd years ago and I still cross paths with people who are in my 200.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think just to the point of Ava,
Yeah.
what
I see you, Ava.
up to
Yeah.
you next. To the point of, of course, 20 classes like a minimum. And so like that's your minimum. Obviously, if you have the luxury or you're in Boston or you can join live stream, I always say like really suck the marrow out of this training, because again, you're doing it at arguably the only yoga school on the East Coast that can offer you Mysore. If you don't know what that is, come at 5:45 in the morning and watch the little druid Mysore, emerging out of the mist, to do a self-practice in which no teacher's teaching. There's no words. They're teaching entirely through adjustments. That's mind-blowing. And that's the mother of what we call vinyasa. Go experience it. You've got the teacher, the country's most senior Iyengar teacher teaching at the country. Go take a class with Patricia Walden or Natasha Atsopoulos, or figure out what's Iyengar ropes. A whole class done just on ropes. So I really want you to have this spirit of curiosity, because whether you do the intensive or the 11 weekends, you're literally going to have access to the world of yoga at your feet. And while you're training, having these influences percolating is incredible what it does to your own raison d'etre, which is like, what's your reason? What do you want to do? Because what Natasha's trying to do is totally different to what I'm trying to do. And yet beautifully, we're both aiming at the same thing, which is to quieten the chatter of your mind. Yeah. Ava, go ahead.
Hi, I had another question about the summer online training. In terms of like a lot of the content being like self-motivated and watching videos and whatnot, like, is that content more of like the yoga classes, like the asanas, like the practice, or is it like some of the like we're talking to you about how to structure your lessons, or like more of like the philosophy or educational component?
No, it's the teacher training. It's not
Yeah.
classes. It is,
Yeah.
there
Okay,
is an
cool.
awful lot we have to get through in 11 weekends, right? And that's why Kate's trying to be realistic with you too. When we started teacher training, there was a very serious conversation about, should we not do the Yoga Alliance kind of jump through these hoops, which, most teachers will have a certain wry smile when they talk about yoga. Yoga Alliance talking about cash grabs. For a lot of people, it can take 500 hours, or 200 and a 300 to really get you like learn the alphabet and then the poetry. It's like a tad more difficult than it looks. And, the people that you're going to be working with at the school, we've spent 20 years fighting against the Yoga Alliance norm, which is, you emerge with a piece of paper, you go get a job, at whatever gym that puts bodies in front of you, and suddenly you have this experience of like, oh God, it's just not rolling off my tongue the way I thought it would. And we don't want you to do the standard, give it 12 weeks and go back to your corporate job. Like, if we seem really serious about it, understand that's because this school isn't only one of the only independent schools giving its teachers full healthcare and benefits and stuff. We've really spent 2 decades studying the secrets of longevity in teaching. That's why there's so many of us here in the training who've done it for several decades. So, yeah, it is the exact same content. You just have to have the ability. Now, we'll coach you along the way, Ava. So you'll have absorbed whatever it is, your anatomy weekend, etc. And then you'll be coached in a session. Kate will be like, okay, Ava, talk to me about that material. Now let's get you up on your feet and see how that feels. So there's no difference in the content. It's just the format.
Yeah. And it's a mix between whether it's more pedagogical, like philosophy, and some asana stuff in the recordings, to be more specific too. All right, I want to be sure any other questions get answered. We're always happy to stay a little longer, but I know some people have things they like to do on Sundays. And so I want to be respectful of time. My teacher says we start on time to honor the practice and we end on time to honor the student. So if you have something you want to jump in and ask questions about, now's your chance. Yeah, Lenny.
Hi. So you said that with the training comes a discounted class pass. Is that like fully discounted where like all of the classes are included in the original tuition, or is it something separate that we have to pay?
Yeah, it's separate. So on the website, you'll see that the tuition covers the teacher training weekends. The regular class is not included, but we do give our teacher training students a discount. So if you've never been at the studio, I would highly recommend you come and take classes with us first. Ideally, you'd want to take classes with the teachers before you sign up for a teacher training, though sometimes that doesn't get to happen. We have a 4-week for $49 newcomer special. That would be the first thing I would tell you to do. But then there is a really discounted rate for teacher training students. It's $109 for a monthly unlimited pass and $160 for a 10-class pass. Now, we have people who come from, we've literally had people from Hawaii do this training, and they will still come and take the classes via live stream. You could choose to do, like, again, if you live in another state, just the 20 and bang those out with your 10 class passes and have it be done. Or you could, again, take the discounted rate and then take as many classes as possible if you're in the city, or again, just have a lot of space to be able to do that. And the live stream classes or the in-studio classes count for that.
Thank you.
Alyssa, were you waving or were you just saying hi?
Let's do Alyssa and then Debbie.
Yeah, you're muted. Just hit unmute, Alyssa.
Are you talking to me?
No, not Melissa. Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
Alyssa
No,
D. It's okay.
Alyssa was.
Here, I'll ask you to 1 minute, she says. All right, Debbie, do you want to jump in while we're waiting for Alyssa? Oh, never mind.
I think I'm here.
Yes.
You are.
Good. Absolutely fabulous 45 minutes, I have to say. So great. I mean, I feel it's perfect. Everything. So I am excited. But anyway, literature. Is there any recommended reading?
Oh, oodles of it, Alyssa. However,
Okay.
you don't have to buy anything more. I can certainly give you a list of books that would be interesting for you to have, but upon the start of the training, you will get a manual, which we will provide you, and it has all the info you need for the training itself. Now, every teacher and their best friend will have books they'll recommend to you over the course of the training. And I would encourage you, depending on what person you are, if you're like, I want to go get all the books, feel free to, or, you know, the stuff that you really resonate with, then you sort of direct yourself in that direction. But in the meantime, I would say if you don't have a copy of the Yoga Sutras, that would be the first thing to invest in, just so you have it. Otherwise, you don't need to get anything else to start this training other than just take class and get excited.
Yeah, we're very upfront. There's no hidden costs. This is a very adult training as well. You're not being sent home with homework and things like that. But when I say adult, like if Alyssa gets totally lit up by, a particular train of yoga. Kate's going to be talking to her about Judith Hanson Lassiter and restorative intellect. She might go down that path. Whereas, you know, Mira might be like, give me everything on Bhagavad Gita and classical history. Like, we're going to really let you dictate what you're interested. So there's no like book purchases. The manual is like your 20 years Bible that you'll get and use as a reference. But yes.
Awesome. Love.
Wonderful. Debbie was on deck, and then I see Mira. And if anyone needs to peel off, I'll send a follow-up email so you can reach out to me with any other follow-up questions you might have. I don't want you to feel like you have to stay, but if you do want to stay, I'm more than happy to hang out and keep answering questions for a little while.
Yeah, we can talk about this stuff all day.
It's so true.
If you need to go, peel off. Lovely to meet you. Debbie, go ahead.
Lovely to meet you all.
Hi. First, thank you so much. This was really informative. So, thank you for hosting this and for, yeah, just these teacher trainings. Two quick questions. So, my assumption looking at the dates of the 200-hour intensive is with it being about 4 weeks long and 200 hours, it would be about 50 hours of work a week, is what that would boil down to. Is that a safe assumption?
Well,
generally, so
yeah,
go
ahead.
Depends on where you start. And so it's about 100 hours of pre-recorded content and then the stuff that happens in the weekends. So depending on how you structure it, when you decide to start, what's going to happen. You also do have, so the graduation weekend is that last weekend in August where there is a due date for it. There's a final exam, but don't worry, it's open note. And like, we're not here to trick you. I just want to make sure if my name's attached to you, that you understand some key things, right? That's sort of how we keep integrity in our training. So that is due before the final weekend. You do teach in the final weekend as sort of your practicum, but I do give you until the end of 2025 to finish all of I think the date is like the 22nd of, but I'll give you the date when you sign up. And that's when everything needs to be due in. So if you still have to work through some recordings, if you still have to do your classes, like there are some people who finish it in a month and they just like bang it out. And then there are some people who let it like continue because they want more time to do the work.
And it's called modular for a reason, Debbie. So if you want to start as early as April with recordings, we'll let you. So it's very designed. That's like as I said to Ava, like no difference in the content, but we pass it in a way where if you've got 5 kids like I do and you're like, this needs to be ultimately at my own convenience, or if you travel a lot for work or things like that, it's really designed sort of around people's convenience.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the second question was, I always like when I'm deciding on a training, I love to take a class from all of the instructors who are part of it. So I don't know if it's easiest to share that in the chat or if that's available online, but I would love to see the list of teachers just so I can start taking everybody's classes.
They're all on the website. So if you scroll down from the dates, you'll see the pictures of the teachers. So easy bet, I'm in all of the teacher trainings, the 200. You can come and take class with me. Michael Ponte, as Justine said, is one of the other key lead teachers in the summer intensive and the fall. You'll see Masaki Okamura in both. You'll see Shauna Lemmelman in both. And Gregor Singleton is more in the fall, spring, but he also has a pre-recorded session within the summer. So those would be sort of the key teachers that I would say to take class with.
And then we'll also talk about the influences. So I would say for sure, take class with Natasha Itsopoulos. Yeah. Take an Iyengar class. Guys, even if you hate it, you will walk out learning something. It will make your vinyasa practice better. So like start the process of educating yourself around these internal schools. Ashtanga, you're going to probably have to wait until you're in the training to like experience what that is. But, you know, again, I think part of the distinguisher of being a school is we're going to be feeding you sort of the best of the major lineages of yoga. So if you are interested in getting kind of prepared, those were additional people that you'll be in the orbit with.
And there is a question, Lenny, just asking about the materials. So if you sign up for the summer intensive, because so much of it is pre-recorded, there is a little like you would need to pay your tuition in full to get access early, but we would be able to give you access early. I think we're shooting for April or so, if possible, to be able to give everyone access if they wanted to start early. So that is a little bit of the shift there, but regardless of that, that's the one little aside for you to know. All right, other questions. Yeah, I see Beryl and I see Mira again. So let's do Beryl and Mira. You can unmute. I know sometimes phones are funny that way. They don't want to let you. I'll
Mira,
prompt you
why
to
don't you go
unmute.
ahead? Beryl, do you want to try typing? You could type your question and then
Okay.
we can answer it that way.
So sorry to ask multiple questions during this informational session.
Anyone who's still here is interested in learning. Like,
Exactly.
again, we can
Please.
talk about this all day. Don't apologize. No, don't
We are
apologize.
educators. We love questions.
Okay, glad to hear that it's not a nuisance. My next question is, we don't live in the Boston area, and so I know that I'm looking at the fall teacher training as, a hopeful option for me. And so I can probably come to Boston a couple of weekends, but maybe not every single weekend that the trainings are occurring.
Yep.
Is there something that you believe is lost in translation if you're doing the live stream versus in person? And I'm asking because I kind of know that there is a little something lost in translation, but I'd like to know if there's something more specific that might be that you could point to, either of you could point to as a limitation of doing the live stream.
I mean, I think my answer would be we'll work really hard not to have it be that, and we'll guide you when you should be here. So off the top of my head, I think we're going to insist you be here for practicums, practice teaching. The only thing I think is really lost in translation is assisting. And that would be, if you want to do the assisting weekend, you'll get a cursory intro to it, but like you might want to invest in coming up and doing an assisting training if hands-on adjustments really lights you up, or it might not. So, again, I think we're pretty seasoned at doing this. You'll practice teach using your Zoom and the whole classroom will turn and face you. So we do a really nice job of, you would not be the first person from Maryland and DC doing this training, actually. Chicago, Beryl was saying she's in Chicago. And is taking classes via online mandatory.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
No, so the 20 classes you would, unless you can come to Boston, you would still need to take the 20 classes. Like I have people ask me this all the time. Like I have a home studio here in Chicago and I would really rather take classes there. I completely support you in doing that. And you still need to take 20 classes with us at Down Under via live stream. I've held this line for people. We've even had someone in our 300 from Germany, right? And that had like literally not just difference in time, like difference in space, but difference in time. So I really do hold up this like level of expectation for everyone. So don't feel like it's only you. It's like, no, we do want everyone to have that experience. And the live stream is such a beautiful thing to have, to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Compromising, right? Like if you're not feeling great one day, you don't have to come in and sit in the corner. You can be on your screen and be sniffly and, deal with yourself on the screen, right? You can also, if you decide like, oh gosh, like last year my mother got married, I would have then watched the recordings because I was busy doing that, right? Like that's a beautiful flexibility. Not to mention the recordings are available to everyone after the weekend. So if you're like, gosh, I really didn't get what Kate was talking about, the planes of movement, I'm going to go watch that recording again. And then I will be able to take notes because I was in it in the room and I didn't want to take notes, but then I can watch the recording and take more vigorous notes. So I hope that helps that.
Yeah. And I mean, Beryl, to cut to the chase, again, it's 20 classes. It's hardly anything. It's like a bare minimum for me.
Yeah.
You can't make sense of the material if you don't watch it in action. So that's the reason. Like when I just talked about like heated flow and being a confrontation specialist, like think of this training itself as being like the literature class. Like we're analyzing ingredients of good teaching, right? But when we talk about bringing people to their edge and cradling them there, you have to go and watch Masaki or Gregor or these sort of legendary power teachers you have to at least once witness them doing that in a class. Does that make sense? So that's the reasoning. It's not, I mean, power to go take your classes at the home studio that you have, but like at least make sure you've educated yourself on what the key styles that you're being taught are. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. To secure your spot in the training, should you pay the deposit at the same time or apply first and then wait?
Yeah. So that's a
Advance
great
that.
question. The application and the deposit are what hold your spot. So especially since I will say our trainings do have a history of selling out, and like we did have a wait list in our spring training, which we weren't able to accommodate. So the application and the deposit are due, and that will do two things. It will both like let me know you're interested, and it'll put you in the program. In the very rare instance, like the only time I wouldn't like accept you is if maybe you were too young or you're thinking this training is to like, I don't know, bake a cake. Like if you really don't have an understanding of what this is, that's one of the few times that I'll be like, this isn't the right training for you. But for our 200, if you've been practicing for a few months, if you're over the age of 18, I've even had 17-year-olds sign with their parents because we just need to make sure that is a clear, like, I am committing to this. But other than that, you can assume that if you have come to this information session, you've looked over the website, you know that this training is a vinyasa training. If you apply, you will be accepted, but you do need to put in the deposit in order to hold your spot. Now, if you do have more questions about that, you can always feel free to chat with me about any and everything. I'm very available and very happy to chat more.
Let's go to, I'm calling out people, but anyone who hasn't asked a question.
Yeah.
Lisa, Isabel, I'm going through.
Anybody.
There's anyone with their screen off. Any other questions? No such thing as a dumb question. You can go big and philosophical and you can talk about the industry and you can be like, why do you think? I mean, just really, this is your training and your chance to ask anything and everything. So, Melissa.
So for the 20 classes that we take during the training, those don't all have to be at Brookline Studio, do they? Or can they be at any?
No, mix it up.
Okay. And then can you repeat what the discount for the classes is? I understand it's like $109 per month.
For the yogi pass, so that's the unlimited pass, and then $160 for a 10-class pass. And again, before you do either of those things, I would recommend doing our newcomer pass if you haven't already, because that is the most efficient use of it. But as soon as you sign up, you can then just ping me and be like, hey, I want in on this pass, and I'm happy to do that from whenever you sign up until the end of the training.
Okay. Is it required to do a monthly class or a 10-class pass for the entire time for like the whole?
Some people bang out all their classes in 1 month. Like they might then, do one like unlimited month and then do all the classes then. That might work really well for someone doing the summer or the modular training. With the fall or the spring that's a little bit more spread out, I think it helps as a learner to have classes sort of sprinkled in. But of course, you know your life better than anyone. So I'm not going to like require you to have that. If you don't want it, you can decide when it works best for your schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything like this along these lines, we're generally really flexible on. Does that make sense? Like if you have life circumstances going in, I mean, to the point I made to Beryl, especially with yoga teacher trainings, you get what you pay for. I mean, literally, if you're doing any research, you can get them almost free. You can get these like entirely digital ones. I think you can get a computer generated thing too. So one of the reasons why you want to look at the industry and look at like, why is Yoga Journal asking the Down Under folks to set the standard? Like, this is one of the great cash grabs happening in America. All the independent studios do it with the studio owners because they'll take your money. The question is, will they put you out equipped to succeed? Otherwise, you have invested vast amounts of money in something that has trained you to teach like someone else. Does that make sense? And so whether it's, I will always say to people, wait if you don't have enough money and then do it the next year, but do it from teachers who have a proven track record of being the sort of gold star in that, whether it's us or someone else. But don't rush this decision because you'll invest time learning this stuff. And what will be the distinguisher when you go out? Getting the piece of paper isn't the hard part. It's what happens after that. Does that make sense? And then again, we'll set you up, whether it's, I mean, again, you'll be able to audition for us and go on the floor, or we'll equip you for like what the next best step to cut your teeth will be. But look at the number of people statistically who emerge with a 200-hour and who then give up within 6 months, because it's frightening. And that is like, we're a good fit for you if that's what you're interested in learning, is longevity in teaching, because everyone here has been doing it so long. So again, Melissa, we don't really sweat the small stuff. If you want to do the classes here or here, like we'll work with people, but we're really interested in the curriculum that we're going to give you so that you are set up for success. Do we see a lot of people from our trainings being hired at our studios? Well, we're pretty ambitious. So,
Yeah.
you know, we'll probably open another studio maybe sometime this year. So yeah, I mean, it tends to be a great place to do a training,
Mhm.
but we're going to make you good. So
Yeah.
you've got to be up for that journey. Does that make sense? Like, our job is to get you ready for the floor. And yes, I mean, Down Under has, you know, we've opened a studio every year for the last, you know, since pandemic. And, you know, I mean, again, you'll find us real open books about that. Every time we open a new studio, we channel it back into raising managerial salaries or adding a different benefit. So,
Yeah.
we're not going to ever go the Yoga Works Core Power route, but there is an organic feeling that we can feel when we have enough teachers ready to open another studio. And, you know, Delaney Stone's not on this call, but she's our faculty director. So for the last couple of months, she's been saying, I can feel we're ready. So yeah, I would expect we probably open another one at some point this year. Yeah, great questions.
Other questions, if any? Oh, another one in the chat. You're welcome. All right. Seems like a natural lull. Oh, Alyssa, please. It's okay.
All right.
There you go.
This is okay. No question is silly. I
No
understand.
question is silly.
Okay. Here's my question. The girl is 68 years old. Okay. I just feel there's a little piece of me that says, oh boy, will I be accepted?
Well, Patricia, who's 77, would be like, Alyssa, you're my dream. Why? Did you hear me say that it's a little harder than it looks to be a good yoga teacher?
Yeah.
We're going to get you up on your feet. You're going to learn the alignment. You're going to learn how to deliver. You're going to learn how to word room. But then did you hear me say that the thing that has people change their work schedule to take your class is your dialogue?
Yeah. Okay.
Where do you think good dialogue comes from?
Yeah.
Thank God. I hope you've got a little bit of experience under your belt. You know, especially when I'm working with 20-something teachers, you know, a lot of what I'm shaping is they'll say, dear God, I don't have a lot to draw on for that dialogue. And again, you know, each of these things, you know, I say dialogue, but have you guys been in those classes where, you know, I mean, classic hot power, they're teaching a hot power sequence, they put you in pigeon and you're like, oh God, here's where they tell a personal anecdote because they've been trained to share personal stories. And then they say, so I stepped out of my apartment and I saw a homeless person and it made me feel compassion. Let's talk about compassion. Compassion is, and I'm like, shoot me now, like I'm done, right? So it's sort of like, do you understand that those, what we call yoga speak, that sort of very cheeseball one-liner, like get comfortable with discomfort, like it doesn't ring true. This is an art. There's an art to teaching, which is sharing just enough of your sort of thought process that it elevates the class to being a study of self. That requires a maturity. So, Alyssa, I would ask you to, from here on in, please don't apologize for the experience you have.
It's not a doubt, a self-doubt.
Yeah, no, you'll be celebrated and welcomed.
Okay, because I see all these beautiful young faces in front of me and I'm thinking, whoa, but you know what? I'm there. I'll see you there.
Great. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Anything else? We want to release you to your days and not make you feel like you have to stay on as well. Other questions? Yeah.
So what are some qualities that you see in your best yoga teachers?
Kate already said the first one, willingness to always remain a student. Patricia Walden, the country's most senior Iyengar teacher, says of Natasha Rizopoulos, arguably one of the country's most famous vinyasa teachers, that the more famous Natasha became, the more humble she became. Natasha was an Ashtangi who later on became an Iyengi, who later on became a vinyasa. She blends all of those influences in her teaching. She considers Patricia a teacher of hers. This hunger to learn is one of the major secrets. That's why, like, if all you're looking for is a piece of paper and the cheapest way to do it, like, you're not going to be a good teacher. Like, you got to put in the work. 20 years later, we love what we do. That is an aberration. That is not the norm. So I think that quality of wanting to learn and being hungry about yourself and your svadhyaya, but also this entire world of yoga. If that's exciting to you, that's the first ingredient that you're going to be a great teacher. The second, I mean, Kate, your list will be totally different to mine. Second is more like business yoga stuff. Don't do drama. Don't do drama. Everyone who works here is a consummate professional. And if you weren't, I exited you very rapidly somewhere along the way. When I was looking at, during the pandemic, all those big corporations, so Lifetime, Core Power, they all fired all their people overnight. And we said, look, we'll go under. I actually thought we were going to go under. I said, we'll go under before we fire or furlough a single teacher. Suddenly, Lifetime's two leads, David Magone and Meredith Evangelisti, were like, I think we're going to come over here. When I asked, anyone know about David Magone? 20 years of coming back, never done drama, wonderful, considerate man, so humble, constantly interested in new things. That reputation you build. Just because it's yoga, don't think people aren't bitchy, gossipy, unprofessional, dramatic. You know, I feel something, therefore I should act. You can be having a bad day. If you have a temper tantrum in my lobby, HR is going to have a chat to you. Like, just because it's yoga doesn't mean everyone is like, all your stuff is still there. And, you know, I think one of the most fascinating things is when you talk, have a little look at YouTube. There's a video we did on the power of touch. It's called Into the Light. And Gregor Singleton talks a lot about how, you know, there's an ego boost when you teach, right? Like, I have 5 kids. They don't do anything I say. But I walk into a room of 40 people and I say, raise your right arm, and everybody obeys what I do. That's an ego boost. You have to constantly watch for the slippery slopes in yoga. That he talks about, like, teaching, and then there's his egos in the other room banging on the door, Gregoring, you know, wanting to make it about him. You know, why do you think there's so many sexual abuse scandals? Why are there, you know, these gurus who are built up, and then everyone comes crashing down when they are realized, you know, their guru is very mortal? So I think, you know, the codes of conduct, the professionalism, right? There's a reason you have to actively consent to be touched at Down Under. This is all stuff that goes into the don't do drama and be professional. That's my sort of second one. I mean, Kay, I could go on and on. What would be your top 2?
My top one is to really be interested in teaching, because there's a difference between loving the practice of yoga asana and teaching. Teaching requires a love of being of service, and that's not necessarily something everyone is going to resonate with, and that's not a bad thing. But every time you show up as a teacher, you are being of service to the people in front of you, right? Another saying that my teacher has is teach the person, not the pose, right? Like, you still may have a goal in mind. Like, I have sequences I come in with, but I also want to have a conversation within the context of a practice so that students feel that they have their own sort of way of doing things as well. That's maybe the most important thing.
And
All
if
right.
Mr. Iyengar were here, he would say the purpose of teaching is to teach courage. And that it requires courage to be a teacher. So Angelique wrote in the chat, she's 100% changed her work schedule for one teacher. I think there are teachers out there who, if you had your psychotherapy session booked for Thursday at 10 o'clock and that class became 10 o'clock, they'd pause about which one they wanted to miss. Why is that? What's going on there? And that speaks to the power of yoga to inspire something beyond. Like, do we need to know alignment? Yes. But like even the greatest structural teachers somehow manage to deliver a class that empowers you. And so I actually think it begins, students are very, they can sniff authenticity very easily. And so it requires courage for you to be a teacher. And I think that's another sort of salient quality.
Thank you so much. That's so insightful.
Cool.
All right.
Questions. What a great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am so glad to have shared space with you all today. If you do think of more questions, I will send a follow-up email later today with this recording. So if anyone's not here and seeing the recording, feel free to reach out after you watch it. And I really hope to get to see some of you in class and perhaps get your applications and deposits soon. We are so excited to have you start thinking about working with us.